Hello, everyone, and welcome to the live stream. I hope you're all very well tonight. We have a special guest tonight, Indie Truck Davy. Davy is an expert on Scotland, on the SNP, on everything regarding independence, and I'm showing my solidarity here with him tonight. So I just want to say hello to everyone who's on the stream before I get to Davy. Let's see who we have on tonight. We have CGM. Great to see you, CGM. I hope you're well. I hope everyone can hear us. Can hear both of us well. Let us know in the chat if you can't hear us. I can increase the volume or decrease the volume if necessary. We have Eric, great to see you, Eric. Conservator, great to see you. Geraldine, great to see you. Mark, great to see you. Killer, great to have you on once again. Thanks for moderating. Conservator, I said already hello. We have Aaron, great to see you. Oh, we already have a super chat from Valerio. Thank you so much, Valerio. Let me jump down to Valerio's super chat. Hi Max, SNP. I'll have a very big. They'll have a very big majority in May. Well, we're going to get to that. Thanks so much for that super chat. A quick yes or no, Davy. A massive majority for SNP in May.
According to the polls, Professor John Curtis, the UK's leading psephologist, has just analysed the first 5 polls, and he said if the vote was tomorrow, the SNP would have a majority of 74. On the average of the 5 polls. But will that happen in 3 weeks' time? Not sure.
And 3 weeks is a very long time in politics. Okay, thank you so much, Valerie, for that super chat. Let's see who else is on the stream. We have Glasgow Kiss. Great to see you, Glasgow Kiss. We have Tom. Great to see you, Tom. We also have Ministerian. Great to see you, Ministerian. Gene T. Great to see you. Monkeytron, great to have you on. Great to have you on tonight, Monkeytron. I know it's a little bit late for you, but great to see you. Tom, great to see you, Tom Nelson. We have Doc Davies. We have Paul, Peter, great to see you. Jam Reagan Elite, great to see you. We're up to 165 viewers so far, guys. So remember to smash that like button and share the stream if you can. That'd be great support as well. Remember, you can support the stream by sending a super chat. What's happening tonight is we're going to collect all the super chats and we're going to divide them between 2 charities. One charity, we're going to send some links in the stream, in the chat. So make sure to also send you can support the charity by super chat, or you can also support the charity directly. The charity that I'd like to support tonight for myself is Save the Dogs. They rescue dogs in Romania and Italy who are abandoned on the street. They rescue them, they neuter them so that they don't continue to create more puppies and create another disaster. So it's a great charity that I'd like you to support if you can. And of course, there's no obligation, but please do consider it. Davey, can you tell us a little bit about the charity that you'd like to support tonight?
Yeah, I'd like to support the Beatson Oncology units here in Glasgow. They're a world-renowned cancer research as well as cancer treatment organisation. And they treated my mother, they treated my friend Mitch, and during the pandemic, they tested my wife for cancer. No obstacle, the pandemic. She went in for a COVID test, and when it was clear, whipped her round all the different types of tests that was required to try and detect if she had any form of cancer, because she was no well at the time. Fortunately, it was clear, but the service was phenomenal. In the hospital she was in the hospital, got triaged, had to get in a special area because she was going for a COVID test from her work. And while they were there, the computers all flashed up saying that she couldn't get her cancer tests because of the COVID pandemic, and because the Beatson Oncology has a teaching unit in the Monklands Hospital, they got the message that she was in the hospital, and when her COVID test came back clear, she was sent straight to the Beatson unit, where they finished all her tests in 1 day.
That's amazing. So that's great that she got the all clear. That's amazing.
So
that's great.
They do need funding.
Of
like
course.
all cancer research, they do need funding. So that's where I would like it to go to.
That's great. So guys, truly do consider supporting them directly or indirectly with a super chat. Let's I'd like maybe Davey, if you'd like to introduce yourself to perhaps somebody maybe some people who've been living under a rock. No, I'm joking. Some people who maybe outside the UK who are not familiar with you and the situation that and your channel, if you'd like to give us an introduction to yourself and the channel.
Well, I'm David McGuinness, and I'm a truck driver. And I was prompted by some friends, because I'm a bit of a political nerd, to start broadcasting, because you don't get guys that sound like me who are political nerds. You know, I'm just a wee guy from Glasgow, a wee Ned. You know, so I'm just a truck driver with an interest and a point of view. And of course, I've been a campaigner for a very long time. I've been a political campaigner on all sorts of causes: CND, poll tax, bedroom tax, all these sort of things done through the years. Sarah and I have been ardent campaigners.
So you have all the badges.
Yes.
I just want to just be okay. Sorry, I'll let you continue, Davey.
No, that's basically it. I have somebody else, myself and the guy called Gordon Ross. He does a show from his car because he's a driving instructor. I do a show for the truck because I'm a truck driver. And sometimes I do it at home as well, because I'm more or less semi-retired now. So I only work 2-3 days a week, and I'm at home the rest. You know, so I'm fortunate enough to be in a position where I can do that.
Guys, I do highly recommend checking out Davey's channel, because Davey, he's like a machine. He does these videos that are half an hour long, talking about the news in Scotland, about COVID, about Brexit, about the independence, all of these topics, all in a half hour or even more video without any mistakes, and I'm incapable of doing that. So kudos to that, and do check out his channel. I want to say thank you to some people who sent some super chats. JD, thank you so much for that super chat, JD. There wasn't a comment. Mark Sanders, thank you so much for that. A $5 between the two charities. Very kind of you. Thank you so much for that. Adrian Jenkins, thank you so much for that super chat as well. That's really kind, guys. Those charities will really appreciate that support. So we're going to look at some questions. First of all, we're going to try and get through as many questions as we can. I want to say a massive thank you to Davey for spending time with us tonight. Nico, thanks so much for that super chat as well. Thanks for the charities. So let's start with the first question, which is from Glasgow Kiss. And this one is for you, Davey, so I'll keep quiet on this topic. It says here, I don't know if you can see the first question, Davey. It says, the SNP are asking folk to use both votes SNP. I know why they can't ask people not to vote for them, but do you think, as has historically happened, this will hurt them in the list seats? So maybe you can give a bit of an explanation as to the difference between the Parliament seat and maybe the list seat, or how things work in the election. We
have a proportional representation system in Scotland. It was designed for us by Westminster, where we have 73 constituencies, and then we have regional seats. And that makes up the 129 seats in our Parliament. So what happens is that we get two votes. One is a regional vote for a list MSP, and one is a constituency vote for the party who we wish to be in government, right? So that's how it works, and it's split. Now, the stronger you do on, like any proportional representation system, the stronger you do on the initial vote, the more times your vote is divided on the regional list. The idea is to give a true reflection of the vote, the people of the voters, if you like, the people. And so here we have a system where it's split by 10. It's the additional members system, right? So let's say the SNP have 120,000 or 1.5 million votes on the constituencies, and then break that down by 73, and that puts them in the strongest position. The rest are coming in with their votes at the same time as well, and it's calculated. Winner takes all on the constituency, and then the vote divide happens on the list. And as long as you make a threshold on the list, then you will get a seat. But the strongest party on the list comes up against denominators of 10. And if it's divided by 10 and it's under the threshold, then they don't get the seat. They don't get a seat. But the idea is it's fair because they already hold the constituency. It's complicated now. What they're trying to do now is game the system. But there's only one guaranteed way to game this system, because it was set up to make sure nobody ever got a majority in the Scottish Parliament. So the only way to game the system is if every member of the population voted one way, twice. And that's the only way to game this system. Now, my interest in what's going on in this election is to see if it can be gamed, because as far as I can see, the way the voting system's been set up, there is only one way to game that system, and that is for every single person of voting age to vote for the same party twice, and that guarantees a majority.
Do you see that happening?
No.
So what do you think is a more likely scenario?
The independent support here in Scotland will vote SNP on the constituency, every single one, no matter what the political allegiance is. And that's a strong measure of, but is it going to be over 50% of the voters? That's a question that's going to be asked. And then on the list, most party members will give their second vote, and everybody else will need to make their own mind up. Party members.
Okay, I'm just looking in the. I'm looking in the chat. Some people are saying SNP 1, Greens 2. Because
that's the thing. Everybody's looking to see if they can game this system to get, and it's not to get a majority. It is to get a super majority. The idea of the 2/3 of the Parliament being pro-independence, because before the Sewell Commission was thrown under a bus, in Section 6 of the Scotland Act, Westminster's not supposed to overturn a law in Scotland if the Parliament has a 2/3 majority in favour. It was a court case in order to overturn things under the Sewell Commission, but it never really came into play until the Continuity Act with Brexit. And then it was Wayne presiding officer who took us to court under the Scotland Act. He said it was out with our competence, our Parliament's competence. It was out with devolved areas.
Okay. So do you think this will hurt the SNP in the list seats?
Well, as I say, Professor John Curtis did an average on the 5 polls that we've had since the campaign started. And he thinks that the SNP will have 74 seats, a 9-seat majority.
Okay.
74 seats. Well, that's what the polls are saying. That's not what he thinks. That's what the polls are saying when you average the 5 polls out.
Do you see the polls changing? Normally the polls narrow as well. I don't know what the opposition really is in Scotland. Is it the Conservatives? Is it the Labour Party? Well, maybe not. Maybe the Conservatives would. At
this point in time in the polls, it is the Conservatives. They're polling at 21% on the list and on the constituency. But Labour, I can see Labour actually overtaking them here. Yep, support for the SNP might shrink a little as well, because we will have the full might and pressure of the establishment upon us, and they own the mainstream media. Media is not devolved to Scotland, which might surprise some of our European counterparts. The media in Scotland is very, very tightly controlled. In fact, the media in the UK is very tightly controlled. The BBC is the most streamlined propaganda machine since Hitler. Since Goebbels. I mean, the BBC have been at it so long. The people are actually brainwashed.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. I want to make sure I have the right one. Okay, we have another one here for you, Davy. As a follow up to Glasgow Kiss's point, many are usually inclined to vote SNP and constituency vote and Green in the list vote until ALPA, did I pronounce it correctly, were formed,
Alpha.
and the ALPA and the Greens seem to be a good bet for the list vote, with them going well in the polls. Are you concerned that that the Indie list vote could be diluted, letting a non-Indie party through the middle, that otherwise would have been lower ranked? So do you see maybe because there's a risk of it being diluted that it could let in the Conservatives?
Well, I'm only going to go on the polls again, and what the polls are saying is that neither a Galloway or a George Galloway's Alliance for Unity or a ALPA are anywhere near getting a seat at this point in time. But that varies. ALPA and two of the polls have been sitting at 6% and maybe make the threshold for up to 4 seats. But it's a complicated system. It's very hard to see. But what we can say is that the Greens did well with a split vote in favour of the Greens in 2016.
I mentioned that my audio is a little bit low, so hopefully this is a little bit better. Or even this is even better. Okay, let's move on to the next question. This is from Chris. Hopefully the audio is a bit better. Chris, the Buttons blog. This is for both of us. As a staunch yes Indie voter and EU Remainer, I often question whether both opinions are compatible. Do you see any contradiction in wishing to gain independence from the UK and Scotland joining the EU, essentially swapping one union for another? So maybe I'll come in first, and then Davey, if you'd like to maybe contradict me, or if you want to agree with me. So I understand. I understand there is a movement. There is a section of the independence movement. I'm not sure exactly how big it is. Maybe 30%. Somebody told me it's that voted for Brexit because they wanted Scotland to become independent and at the same time not rejoin the European Union. So to leave the European Union and become completely independent, something like Iceland. But I understand there is that section, but I don't think it's a contradiction to leave the UK and then rejoin the European Union, because in a way Brexit created a situation where Scotland needed to do this. If Scotland wanted to be part of the European Union, it has to leave the UK in order to do so. Could it have joined the EU if Britain hadn't exited? Maybe that would have complicated the situation, because it would have maybe, I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but perhaps Brexit in a way made independence and rejoining the European Union easier, because if the UK had always been a member, Scotland became independent, maybe it would be more difficult to rejoin, maybe not. Maybe it's too much of a hypothetical. But do you think would you agree with the question that perhaps there's a contradiction with being an Indie voter and pro-European?
No, because the difference is in Europe we would have a veto. In the UK, we don't have a veto. In Europe, everybody is an equal partner, no matter their size, and everybody has that veto. And even some of the devolved parliaments in Europe have a veto on European policy. We've seen that with Walloon and the transatlantic carry-on, right? So, no, because you still retain your sovereignty as a member of the EU, because you have that veto. And of course, you have the right to get up for the table and walk away, as the UK has just done. So no, it's not a contradiction, because you would be an equal partner. In the UK, we are not an equal partner. We are dictated to. We have seen that with Brexit. Where was the consideration for the votes of the people of Northern Ireland and the votes for the people of Scotland? We were told, suck it up, buttercup.
Yeah, sometimes
there is no contradiction in it. But the debate here in Scotland, maybe a wee bit more deeper than your viewers in other parts of Europe have a grasp on. We're not just talking about rejoining the EU, that narrows the debate. We're looking at EFTA, we're looking at the Nordic Council, we're looking at the EEA. We're looking at the customs union and the single market without membership through these organisations. So the debate's a lot wider here in Scotland than the narrow parameters of the question. It's a much wider debate. Because we could do what Norway does. They have full access to the European market.
Yeah.
They pay for it.
Can I just ask you a little bit more about that divide? Well, maybe not a complete divide, but that section within the independence movement that wanted Brexit, that wanted complete independence.
That's because the debate is much wider than rejoining the EU. We have other options open to us for access to the single market and access to the customs union. There are other models out there. We've got the Swiss model. And then, as I say, we've got the Nordic models that are there. The ones that are no members but are that are members of the EFTA. The European Free Trade area. So there are options there. Joining the EU is not the only option. So when we talk about that 30%, they are arguing for different access. They just know what they're saying is we don't have to be full members to have that access. And that leaves trading open with our next door neighbour England as well.
It's going to be interesting how...
because that's how Norway and Denmark do it. Denmark's a member, Norway's no. There you go. So there are models out there that we can follow. And the debate's much wider than people realise out with Scotland. But here in Scotland, and amongst the chartering classes, and including that 30%, then there is a wide debate to be had here.
It seems to me a much wider debate than what's taking place perhaps in the rest of the UK, where you're a Remainer or you're a Brexiteer, and it's really a two polar opposites. While it seems to be in Scotland, it's much more broad. Yes, the debate that's taking place.
That's because what we're seeing in the UK is England looking backwards at glories it used to have, and Scotland looking forward is progressive, and we have no looking back. We're looking forward, and this leaving the European Union and trying to break international treaties and set off as a buccaneer on the planet. England's having a mental breakdown at the moment, and the rest of us are having to suffer the outrage. Fintan O'Toole of the Irish Times has done fantastic psychoanalysis on this stuff. Absolutely. The perspective is brilliant. The Great British Programme only actually worked in one place, and that was England. That's why England and the UK or Britain are interconnectable. Whereas the rest of us still have their own identity. The only time you ever see an England flag is at a football game. Everybody else is flying Union Jacks. They've all been brainwashed. Whereas we, the Celts, still know who we are.
Okay, before we get to the next question, I just want to read out some more super chats. Wee Scott's Dog, Tories have electoral luck, despite the fact they clearly suck. They don't bother Davy with a farewell wavy. Say stuff yours. I won't give you a truck. Very nice. I'm terrible at reading out poetry. Max Sanders, thank you so much for that super chat. He says Alex Salmond is debating George Galloway on Spectator TV now. Oh my God.
Oh, I'm glad I missed that.
Okay, let's move on to next. Thanks so much, guys, for the super chats. Remember to smash the like button. We're up to 418 viewers. That's amazing. Okay, that's great. So let's move on to the next question because we have so many to get through. This is from the Ministerian, who says to both of us, what do you think is the aspect of the Yes campaign that needs to focus most? What do you think is the aspect the Yes campaign needs to focus most on to convince people? Is it Brexit, COVID, Trident, or the Tories? I'll let you go first with that one, Davey.
It's none of those things. It's currency. We have to make the people understand that creating a central bank is quite easy. We have to make them understand that we've got enough savvy to take the best parts of banking regulations for right around the world, slap it all together into one set of regulations and have a central bank up and running in short order. Because the economy, stupid, has always been the argument, as Westminster says, right? So we have to convince the people that actually the crap that's being spoken about being able to set up a currency, foreign currency reserves and things like that. I mean, we've got all the natural assets of the UK. Jesus Christ. It's not as if we can't print money against these assets.
But
we have to create a central bank and slap together a decent set of banking regulations. And we can cherry pick that for right around the world.
Do you not think that's maybe
too adopt the regulations of the European Central Bank?
Do you not think that's maybe too complicated of an issue for, and I don't mean this in a condescending way, but for the average Joe?
No, that's what I'm saying. We've got to convince the average Joe. I'm the average Joe. I'm the average Joe. I'm a truck driver. You know, I spend every day convincing the average Joe that these things are not complicated.
Because if we look at something like because I focus a lot on Brexit, and I'm thinking, if you can go to the fishermen who are trying to sell their fish, the shellfish, for example, who are decimated at the moment, that industry is decimated. If you go to them and say, look, the way out of this problem is overcoming Brexit, rejoin the European Union, for example, would that be, and the only way to do that is through independence. Would that be something that you would consider as something useful, or would it be a distraction?
No, that's definitely where we will go when that campaign comes on, because it's going to be many issues in the campaign. First, we have to win this election. Yeah. But of course, but you've got to remember, this is the irony of it. The reason why we have third country rules in the EU on shellfish is because the UK government insisted on it, because it wanted to protect its monopoly in shellfish to Europe.
And it's also ironic that it was the British government that insisted on having these rules in the first place.
Aye, it is ironic. But people have to know
2008 or whatever it was.
Okay.
We also have a question from Glasgow Kiss, which is I think a following on from this. What are the best strategies to fend off against inevitable attacks from unionists and the media? In 2014, the currency was the main focus. This time, I'm guessing it's the same plus trade, economic recovery, and the vaccine rollout. So what are the best ways to fend off against the unionist arguments? Or maybe I just want to add my own bit into this. What are some of the best arguments from the unionists against independence?
Well, they haven't come up with one yet.
Okay, that was a simple answer. Well, so how would you fend off against attacks from the unionists if they say, well, the currency you need to use the pound, and the pound is printed in London, so you have no control over interest rates, or you have no control over the flow of money.
That's when we get back to telling them it's all right. We'll sort that out by just creating a central bank. We'll pass a bit of legislation to create a central bank. Now, what people have to understand is here in the background, there are many different groups working on many different things, and currency is one of them. Right? They're already putting together sets of banking regulations, cherry picking it from the best regulations around the planet. All this work's going on in the background. We have a currency commission. We have groups of experts talking about these things. The problem is the mainstream media makes everybody else think we don't.
That's a very valid point, because a lot of people parallel this with the Brexit vote. And if you look at the Brexit vote, the Brexiteers were not preparing anything. They just said, we're going to leave, and that's it. And there was nothing prepared. And for that reason, you can see the disaster that Brexit is. But you have reinforced this, and I've heard this before, that there are a lot of movements, working out, okay, how do we develop a currency? How do we develop a central bank? What type of legislation do we need? How do we deal with trade? What sort of markets should we join the EU? Should we join the EEA? How should we deal with independence? There seems to be a lot more on the ground, a lot of a lot more preparation in respect to Brexit.
We have got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of think tanks working on these things. I'm a member of a few of them myself, including the currency, the central bank one, where we want to operate under MMT, modern monetary theory. And I'm involved in that debate myself, along with guys like Professor Richard Murphy and John Johnson, the accountant in Inverness. So I've got, there's a lot more going on the ground here than people actually realise.
Yeah, I agree.
It's a huge grassroots movement. I mean, there's a whole think tanks like Business for Scotland and the Commonweal. They're all working on these things.
Okay, before we move on to the next question, I just want to say thanks to Taderes. Thank you so much. I'm sorry for mispronouncing your name. Thank you so much for that super chat. Taderes says, what do the both of you think of the Northern Independence Party and discontent with Westminster in Northern England? So I assume you're quite familiar with this party, are you, Davy? The Northern Independence Party.
Well, I'm aware of some movements in the north of England. I don't know if your viewers are aware, but Berwick-upon-Tweed now has held, I think it's 2 or 3 referendums on rejoining Scotland because it's got Scottish postcode, but they don't get all the extra benefits that we get living in Scotland, like lower council tax, no prescription fees, better social contract with our government, what the people doing the road is. We don't pay for our water, whereas those people in Berwick-upon-Tweed have to pay for their water, things like that. So Berwick-upon-Tweed looks towards us. In fact, some of their kids even go to school in Scotland. It's nuts. And they get one of the advantages of things like free higher education, that because of what secondary school they went to. Yeah. But the rest of the town doesn't get it. It's absolutely mental. So the people of Berwick-upon-Tweed with a TD15 postcode, which is a Scottish postcode, went back into Scotland, but Westminster keep denying them.
Of course.
So much for democracy.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. This is from Killer. This is for you, Davy. The internal market bill hardly gets spoken about currently. So it was a big issue some time ago. How do you see it? How do you see it being used against the devolved governments and in particular Scotland? Where do you think Westminster will use the EVEL first? So can you give a bit of maybe a little bit of background on the internal market bill?
The internal market bill actually drove, of course, a horse and cart through a horse and carriage actually through the devolution settlement, because what Westminster said was you have 2 governments, but only you can spend on these issues. Well, that's no fair. So they drew up the internal market bill, which means that the markets are going to be equalised right across the UK, and that allows them to spend in Scotland in all devolved areas. And that means taking the money for the Scottish Parliament to do it, turning the Scottish Parliament into nothing more than a talking shop and a county council.
Wow. Can you also respond to the part about English? Was it English votes for English laws?
Oh, evil. English votes for English laws. That was the ultimate insult to the people of Scotland the day after the referendum, when the people of Scotland said, OK, we'll give you another go. We'll give you another chance to balance things up. And the first thing Mr. Cameron did was address the English issue and ignore Scotland again. And what he did was he decided that he'd make the Scottish MPs and the Parliament second-class MPs, because on matters that only pertain to England and Wales, the Scots MPs don't have a vote. But on matters that pertain to Scotland, they all get a vote.
Yeah, it's not.
And that's actually why they're challenging the Scottish government, because we've just passed a bill to enshrine the United Nations Charter on the Rights of Children into Scots law and into our statutes, and they're challenging us because they say that even though it's a devolved matter, They say it would prevent them from legislating for the whole of the UK, because they would need to take Scots law into consideration and the situation in Scotland into consideration, and they don't want to have to do that. What sort of insult to democracy is that?
I remember. I remember.
When a parliament unanimously votes to place something into law, and they decide no.
Sorry, no, it was. I remember Ian Blackford brought it up in Parliament on Wednesday, didn't he?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry, go on, Davy.
Deplorable. Taking our Parliament and our legal system to court so that they can breach the rights of our children. Wow.
I hope the only good that can come out of this is more people will view this and say, look, we don't want any part of that, and it will encourage more people to support.
There's going to be a political comedy come up over the next couple of years. It's going to have everybody rolling about laughing, because we in the SNP intend to enshrine 5 United Nations rights and charters into our modern statutes as we update our legal system. The next two to go through the Parliament, and they will be passed unanimously, is the rights of the women. The United Nations Charter.
I hear some support in the background.
Right, and the United Nations Charter on the rights of the disabled. They're the next two we're going to fire into our statute.
I get this image that England is going one direction and Scotland is going in a completely opposite direction. Culturally and politically.
Oh, aye, definitely. But there's going to be pure political and comedy gold, Max, because they're going to spend that much time in court. The divorce lawyers will walk in and tell the judges to piss off. Okay. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah. Okay, we have another super chat from Lewis. Thank you so much, Lewis. Remember, guys, to smash that like button. What's the chances of a unionist fringe causing Northern Ireland-style violence? Okay, this is very concerning. Violence in the event in the run-up to Scottish independence. Will this violence be stoked to prevent Indy by the British state? So, do you see something like maybe unionists acting a bit like loyalists in Northern Ireland, where they take up arms? I don't see Douglas Ross doing this, perhaps.
They are going to try this, Max. They are going to try this, but what they've got to realise is we in Scotland, we're not that stupid. We're not going to separate in house and fire. We'll leave that to other nations and other stupid people. We're not setting our own house and fire. We know the power of peaceful protest, and we know history. As an oppressed people, we have always been looking how others escaped their oppressors. And people like Gandhi and Nelson Mandela inspire us. We're not going to set our own house and fire. They can try that crap, but we are much more intelligent than that.
Very well said, very well said. Great to hear as well. Thank you so much for that super chat as well, Lewis. We'll go on to the next question. This is from Killer for both of us. I knew this topic would come up. It's UBI. So UBI has been mentioned in the last 2 leaders' debates, and there's interesting things in the SNP manifesto. Have you both seen this, and what are your thoughts? So I saw the debate in where they went quickly around the leaders on the debate stage about UBI, and they first went to Douglas Ross, and he was like, no, because, and they wouldn't let him finish, but no was the answer. He wouldn't support a UBI. He said, no, there are other means that are better. And of course, I imagine his alternative would be universal credit, which is completely different to UBI. A disaster. But I did hear something quite positive from, I think, the Greens support UBI, the SNP, of course, support UBI, and the Labour Party seemed to support UBI, the Liberal Democrats as well. But the Labour Party I was a bit not so sure about. They said they supported it during the pandemic, but that makes me afraid that if there wasn't a pandemic, they wouldn't support UBI. Davey, what's your thoughts on UBI and the SNP's stance on UBI?
Well, we've just put in our manifesto that we're going to try and introduce over the next 5 years a minimum income. We can't go as far as a universal basic income because we don't have control over our fiscal levers. Most of them lie in Westminster. But what we're going to try and do through the new Scottish social security system that's been set up, and using the powers that have been devolved to us under the Smith Commission, we're going to try and get to a point where everybody has a minimum income, right? And hopefully it'll be enough for everybody to at least be able to pay their rent, pay their council tax, keep the heating on, and feed everybody.
I think a great first step.
Sorry, Sarah was about to join the debate there.
I think at least that, I mean, a basic minimum salary, a basic minimum wage is a good first step. Yes. So, but in an independent Scotland, do you think a UBI would be on the table?
Oh, it seems to have worked. It seems to have worked as an experiment in Finland.
It was quite limited, but I think that's one of the problems with UBI. Sorry, I saw somebody had asked what is UBI. UBI is a universal basic income. I'll just go quickly over. It's normally about something like £1,000 or €1,000 per month for the rest of your life for everyone who's over the age of 18. This is the general idea of a UBI. It doesn't have to be £1,000 or €1,000. It can be something like that. But it's in order to give people a basic to live, so they don't have to worry about whether they can pay their bills or whatever. And it's universal, so it's for everyone. It's not means tested. It's just for all people over the age of 18. Even rich people would get it, anyone would get it, but the idea with means testing is that it increases a bureaucracy that is counterproductive to actually providing for people. Do you want to say anything else about that, Davey, or do you want me to read? I can jump to some more super chats.
Go your super chats, Max, right?
Okay. This is from Class Action. Thank you so much for that super chat, Class Action. When Scotland gets its independence, do you see Wales following suit, Irish reunification, and do you see England breaking up as well? That's an interesting one. So do you see? So I know that there is a link between Scottish independence and Welsh independence. One is dependent, not completely dependent, but I have seen polls that say that if Scotland doesn't become independent, support for Welsh independence would probably go down. But if Scotland does become independent, support for Welsh independence goes up. What do you think about that, Davey?
I'm not really sure about the situation in Wales. I do see the polls saying that support for independence is up, but you also see the other argument in Wales at the moment and that's the one for getting rid of devolution.
Yes.
And that seems to be quite strong as well. But you've got to remember, there are an awful lot of English people who live in Wales per capita compared to the amount of English people that live in Scotland per capita. Right? So, and most of the English people who live in Scotland support the idea of independence, which is quite funny. But I can't say there's a direct link. No, I can't.
Maybe there's a wave that the Welsh would like to ride, but I don't see it following.
Historically, the link went from the top of Scotland right down the middle of the UK and everything to the west side. It was Cymraeg. Right. Everything on the west it was Cymraeg, and they were all Celts, and they all spoke Gaelic, and that includes the parts which are now England, like Cumbria and down through Preston, Liverpool. That was all historically the peoples that lived in the west side of this island, and that was traditionally Cymraeg. So, and of course that included Ireland, the island of Ireland, and the Western Isles, and the Northern Isles. So that was all Cymraeg. So there might well be, a characteristic link, maybe even a genetic link. I mean, when let's face it, when it comes to redheads in the world, the Welsh is the Irish and the Scottish, So there's definitely
a lot of mixing there, yeah.
Somewhere, So. Yeah, I mean, historically, you can dig up maps of this stuff. It's all there in the archives, in the history books.
Can I ask also your opinion on Irish reunification? When do you see it happening? When do you see it happening?
Northern Ireland's been getting thrown out the door since 1998. They just haven't put their jacket on yet. I mean, I don't know where Westminster could date to these kids to get them to walk.
I asked the same question myself.
There's even videos battering about there that take the mickey out of it, you know. Like you've got England, Scotland, Ireland, the EU, Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland, and the EU in one room, and England's trying to usher Northern Ireland out the door. You can go and stick to your next door neighbour, or your next door neighbour being Ireland, saying, "Hey, come on, you want to see the bad man make Europe score?"
I remember it was a fantastic video. I think I actually had it on one of the streams. It's really good. It's a guy from Cork actually who does it.
Since the Good Friday Agreement was signed, they've been running down the province to the detriment of the people on both sides of the divide to try and get them together to get this border poll. Brexit's just the last way to step on it.
Yeah, I think it's, as you say, 1998 when it was signed, that was the first steps towards a united Ireland. And I think the unionists, the ordinary unionists, I've met some of them, and they are, in their eyes, they would say, look, I prefer to be part of the UK, but at the end of the day, I care about having a job. I care about paying my bills. If being part of a united Ireland means I'll be able to do that, then okay, I'll go with that. The people who are really against it are the politicians, and the politicians, because they have a job, that's their job. They have to fight against reunification. They have to fight for the union. But I think if you sat down with them without cameras and recording devices, they would probably say, yeah, it's fucked. Sorry for my language, but the union is fucked. That's it.
Max, as we spoke about this earlier, is the young don't give a damn about the stuff in the past. They've grown up in peace, they've grown up together, and they're only interested in their future. And if the UK is not the future, it's a bit like the young here in Scotland. It consistently polls between 72 and 76% of the young, the under 35s in our country want it. Independence. They want the right to make their own decisions. They want to mend the mistakes that we've made in the past. Like to use your language, like fucking up the planet. They want to sort it, and they don't want they don't want Westminster doing the sorting for them. They want to do the sorting for themselves, and the same thing will happen in Northern Ireland.
And if you look at the Brexit vote was about going backwards. And who was it? No offense to the older generation, but it was mainly the older generation that it seems that wanted to go backwards. The middle class, richer people, middle class, older generation who wanted to go back to the 1950s or whatever it was. Let's move on. We have from Glasgow Kiss, says, for a dragon, cheery Davy. I'm not sure what that's about.
Aye. Hey, Glasgow Kiss, the dragon says hello.
I just want to read another few super chats before we go on to the other questions, because a lot of them come in there. We have Kieran. Thank you so much, Kieran. Cian. Hello from Dublin. That's great. Thanks so much for that. Hello there. We have Mark Sanders. And Northern Ireland border poll seems poll every 7 years. A Scotland border poll every 40 years. I write. See you in court. I think you'd agree with that.
Oh, yes, I definitely agree with that.
We have another super chat from Tadez. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. He or she says, I think if Scotland becomes independent, Northern Ireland will become economically isolated, and goods will have to sail from Liverpool to get there. Do you think that'll be the case? So if Scotland becomes independent, Northern Ireland will become more isolated.
It would definitely become more dependent on England if it was to decide to stay in the United Kingdom Union, because of the barriers that would be put up. Because at this point in time, all the supermarkets, I don't know if people are aware of this, all the supermarkets in Northern Ireland are stocked from the Central Belt in Scotland. All the what's called CDCs, Central Distribution Centres for the Northern Irish and Scottish supermarket chains are here in the Central Belt, right along the M8 corridor. The Co-op, Tesco, Sainsbury's is in Cumbernauld. I'm trying to think of the other big supermarkets. Asda's in Grangemouth, and they're all in the motorway network, and they take their trailer loads of food to Stranraer, where it gets on the ferry, where they're towed onto the ferries. They just drop the trailers at the terminals, and the trailers are put in the ferries, and trucks pick them up, the trailers up at the other side in Northern Ireland, and distribute the foods out to the supermarkets. So actually Northern Ireland is dependent on the Central Belt in Scotland to stock its supermarkets. That's how they get stocked. There isn't any central distribution centres for the supermarket chains in Northern Ireland. No. In fact, Northern Ireland's economic crash has been, since the 70s has been a wonder. The reason why Southern Ireland was allowed to go and Northern Ireland was held on to was because Northern Ireland was the industrial heartland of Ireland, whereas Southern Ireland was a rural backwater. It was an agricultural economy. And that was the reason for partition. They wanted to hold on to the powerhouse that was Belfast. Now it's the other way around. The art industry and innovation and everything else is in the south, and Northern Ireland is now an agricultural economy. And Westminster,
Davy, you know a lot about Scotland. You also know a lot about Ireland because you're dead right there. Yeah, it was Belfast, Northern Ireland was really the industrial. We had the Harlan and Wolff, we had the Titanic built in. It was the industrial area, and it made sense to hold on to that than to let it go. Now they can't be rid of it as soon as they can, or quick enough. Tom Nelson, thank you so much for that super chat, for the swear jar. I need to tone down the F-bombs. I'm gonna go through these as quickly as possible, guys. Robert, thank you so much for that super chat. What do you think Boris Johnson's proposed £33 billion tunnel from Scotland to Northern Ireland? Was it the Boris Borough? What's it called?
Actually, under the internal market bill, what will happen there is they'll take away Scotland's infrastructure budget. The money for architects and nutters to try and design such a thing will be given to architects and engineers in London, a bit like the London Garden Bridge.
Yeah.
Scotland will lose a few years of its infrastructure budget to pay these muppets, and what will happen is nothing will ever be built. Nobody's asked the people of Scotland and Northern Ireland if we want a bloody tunnel or a bridge.
Exactly. A few unionists might be happy with it, but very, very few people would be interested. It makes no sense.
And what do we do with Beaufort's Trench? How do we get all that nuclear waste and ammunition out of there in order to be able to complete such a task? You know what I mean?
Oh my God. Okay. Chris Ryan, thank you so much for that super chat, Chris. It would be great if Boris could get his Scotland Northern Ireland tunnel done soon. At least there is a parting gift for the Celts. United States of Crack. United States of Crack. And attention, crack is in Irish, it means fun, okay? Not what you might think it means. Minnie, thank you so much for that super chat for the charities, and keep my fingers crossed for Scottish independence and a peaceful Ireland. Thank you so much, Minnie. Very kind of you, and fingers crossed too. Okay, let's move on to the next question. We have this is from Buxton. Let me just move my screen so no, I can't see it. Let me try and adjust my eyes. In Ireland, there's talk about reunification referendum, but beyond the referendum takes place every... Sorry, I can't read this for some reason.
It's every 7 years, Max. It's about the provision in the Good Friday Agreement, which allows the people in Northern Ireland to have a referendum on the border situation, on reunification every 7 years. It's called the political generation.
Okay. So in Scotland, there doesn't seem to be much talk of that in the country. Sorry, there hasn't been much talk on what the country will be after independence, and Scotland's future is looking a bit out of date. Could this lead to another Brexit situation where where no one has a clue what's going to happen after pro-independence result?
No,
I'll try and make this.
actually, the breakup of states has happened many, many times. Brexit has only ever happened once. So there are models out there. There's the Vienna Conventions, the Vienna Convention and the Vienna Accords, which is set up specifically to deal with these situations. People seem to be a wee bit lacking in this knowledge. We don't do this ourselves. We do it according to international law. We do it according to the Vienna Accords. We do it according to the Vienna Convention, and we have it overseen by the international community and international lawyers. I mean, this has been done millions of times. The breaking up of states, especially in the latter part of the 19th century. So the model's there. There was no model for Brexit. It's never happened before. The EU's no a state. It's a club, it's a union. Whereas the UK claims to be a state and a union. A wee bit of conflict of interest there.
Okay, let's move on to the next question. This is for both of us. It's from Era, who says, what likely kind of conversations are happening behind closed doors? I think this may be hard to answer. Well, I can't answer this question. So, Davy, in regards to independence, what type of discussions are taking place behind closed doors?
Behind closed doors?
In the sense of maybe between maybe different parties within Scotland about independence?
Well, the Greens and the SNP are toying with the idea of coalition in order to legitimise a pro-independence majority in case the SNP don't get that majority on their own. So there's a wee bit of chat in that area, but on everything else, of course, all fields are being looked at. As I said earlier, there's think tanks looking at everything. The reason why you don't know about it is because we don't have any access to the mainstream media. You know, Scotland's the most politically aware country in the OECD 4 years in a row. And over the last 7 years since 2014, we've came second the other 3 times as the most politically aware. And the only other time that anybody... Sarah, be quiet, please. The only... So it's a totally different issue, Max. People don't really know what's going on behind closed doors here, as they say. But that's because it's no visible to the people who live here. It's because there's no media access for the people who live here. We are dictated to and what is on our media.
Can I ask a question?
I mean, I'm banned for the BBC. You know, I can't phone a BBC phone in. I can't get involved in a BBC political debate because I held a protest outside their place.
So you're blacklisted?
I'm blacklisted.
But if you were Nigel Farage, that'd be a different story.
The lack of the devolution of our media is a big problem. There is a psychological warfare going on here in Scotland against the people. The BBC and the mainstream outlets are actually bad for our mental health because day in, day out, there's an onslaught of how crap we are at everything.
Yeah.
You any idea what it's like to live under that? Day in, day out, have the broadcaster in your front room telling you that you are crap at everything. Have you any idea the psychological pressure that puts on our people?
I think it's...
What people think about themselves.
Yeah. No, I think it's something that, in a way, Ireland also went through, you know, from a post-colonial point of view. We always felt that we were inferior. We always felt that we could never achieve anything. And then when we actually became independent, it took a long time, and there were a lot of bumps in the road along the way. But eventually, if you look at Ireland today and compare it to 100 years ago, completely different countries. And that's an interesting point that you raise about the media. How, you know, what sort of media could you see after in a post-independent Scotland? Of course, there wouldn't be the BBC, but
I'm afraid that they would make the same mistakes. They would produce this a carbon copy of the BBC. I have that worry. But one thing's for sure, I'll be standing on their necks to make sure they don't. I want something that's truly representative for the people.
Very good.
And I don't want my media to be telling me every day that my services are crap and anything that I do is crap. You know, that the taxes I pay to my government is being misspent and because they're crap at running our country, when actually the truth is the opposite. We have got marginally better services than any other part of the UK. And the things that we run under our devolved competencies are far superior to anything else in the UK. That's why we have free higher education. That's why we have free medicine at the point of need. That's why we've had 11 years of council tax freeze over the last 14 years. You know, that's why we have free elderly care and the other parts of the UK don't. You know, we have marginal, that's why we don't pay for water. We only pay for getting it pumped into our houses, the maintaining the pipe network, and that's part of our council tax. We have much better council services, especially in care and the care sector. I mean, and yet we are told day in, day out that we are crap and by the media, and yet the evidence of our eyes and statistics don't lie. I mean, for the last 14 years, we have the fastest performing accident and emergency service in the UK. We have had the fastest performing elective surgery service in the UK. We have the best NHS in the UK. We have more NHS staff per capita than anywhere else in the UK. We have more cops per capita than anywhere else in the UK. We have, in the devolved competencies, the social contract that we have with our government is far superior to any other part of the UK, yet day in, day out, we have the mainstream broadcaster in Scotland telling us that we're crap at everything. And that is of great concern to me. What's it done to the psychological, what's it done to the mental health of our country, especially our children, when they're sitting at the dinner table at night, hearing how crap they are every day? What sort of thing does that do to our people? And people don't take this stuff seriously enough, Max. I'm going to lighten that up there. But people don't take this stuff seriously enough. But we're getting to the point now where they're trying to reimpose something called the cringe. It came hours after the 1979 rigged referendum, where they set a 40% threshold and counted anybody that was recently dead and anybody that didn't vote as a no. And because of that, we didn't reach the 40% threshold to get home rule in 1979. And they're trying, and the confidence was knocked right out the country. And the life expectancy plummeted and things like that. And they tried to reimpose that upon us after the 2014 referendum. But with 21 years of devolution, with 21 years of seeing what we can do when we're in Parliament, even though it's limited. And we have been able to reflect on how well we've done. So it is mental torture and we worry about it, but we're at the point where we're looking at it and just saying, are you having a laugh? Even the unionists are looking at it and saying, are you having a laugh? And that's why they don't make a case for the union, because they can't find one.
Because
all they've got left to do is threaten us. I mean, the latest thing to come out of the Westminster think tanks is, if we get that 2/3 majority, which used to be valid under Section 6 of the 1998 Scotland Act, if we get that 2/3 majority, then they should give us a Section 30 order right away, but demand that we hold the referendum in the middle of the pandemic, which would allow them to reinstitute Project Fear, and they could threaten to sever financial assistance to our people via furlough. They could threaten to sever financial assistance to our industry and our economy, and they could threaten to cut off the vaccine if we voted yes. Believe it or not, that's actually been floated in Westminster. How sickle have you got to be to want to threaten a people like that. It's bad enough you use your mainstream media to undermine them psychologically, but then to actually say, well, the best way to hold on to these people is to threaten them.
And then they talk about the EU doing this.
And the money they're talking about cutting off is actually our money, our taxation, our oil and gas money, our electricity, and our taxation right across the board. And they're talking about threatening to. And by the way, I'm not making this up. This was in the London bubble and the press at the weekend there. I'm not making this up, Max.
No, I fully believe it. Something I want to add just before we move on is I hope that when Scotland becomes independent voices like yours will continue, that you will hold the government to account in Scotland as well.
I intend to join the bloody government.
Even better. Tiny Demolition Lover sent us a super chat. I want to say thank you to Tiny Demolition Lover. I was going to talk about it at the end of the stream, but in case I forget, the Discord server is 1 year old. Happy birthday, Discord server. So this is for anyone who became a patron and special guests. After the stream, we normally have a post-stream chat that takes place on Discord, and to get access to Discord you need to be a patron or a special guest. And this server is one year old today, and we have over, I think, 200 people on it. That's great. So thanks for that super chat, Tiny Demolition Lover. We received a super chat also from Conservator who says we're on question 8 of 18, so I better get my arse in gear and move on. So this is from Mark Vessling. Let me make sure I have the right one. Yes. So Mark Vessling asks both, how many seats will pro-independence parties win on the 6th of May? What's your guess? So I can't guess. Indy Davey is the expert here. So, and I think you've already said so that it's difficult to know. But according to polling, if the polling was accurate today, how many seats do you think the SNP would win or independence parties would win?
Well, as I said, Professor John Curtis, who's the UK's leading psephologist, expert on polls, he did an average over the last 5 polls that we've had so far, and he says that if the polling was to work out, if the voting was to work out the way the polls say it would, and this is an average over the 5 polls, then the SNP would have 74 seats. The Greens would have between 6 and 8 seats, and the Alba Party might pick up 1, 2 to 4. It's not that, So the possibility again
that would be a majority of how much for the independent?
That would be 74 and 8 would take us to 2. So we would want another 4 for the Alba Party to meet the threshold for a supermajority. But it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. If the SNP get a majority, it'll be 65 or 66, I would imagine. And the Greens will probably pick up a couple of seats. I don't know whether Alba will pick up any seats, but he's polling. The Alba Party is polling, which is better than can be said for the Alliance for Unity, because they're not really polling. They polled once, but that's it. Out of the 5 polls, they've only polled once. So, and I don't think they're going to make an impact at all. I really don't. And Galloway's went quiet. You've said that he's debating salmon tonight on Spectator TV. I'll go back and have a look at that because that should be funny. That'll be comedy gold. I thought Mr. Salmon's a political series, a serious political strategist. Gorgeous Georges just wants attention. You know what I mean? And he's hoping he's got a big enough name to be able to sway a few loonies to vote for him. And what's funny about that is Gorgeous Georges, the Celtic supporting Dundee United supporter, expects all of these unionists, who are generally Rangers supporters, to vote for him. Hilarious stuff. You know what I mean? That's, because football plays a big part in life here in Scotland.
I think it's an uphill struggle for George. Crash Dummy sent us a super chat, and it's EEA EU aside. Will an independent Scotland be more like Ireland, high growth, low taxes, or more like Denmark, Norway, high taxes, happy people, and Hygge?
That's an interesting question, and I was talking about this today in my own vlog. You know, when we were introducing the 5 tax bands a few years back instead of the UK's 3 tax bands, and the reason I was talking about it is because the Institute for Fiscal Studies have released a report saying that their 5 tax bands don't work, they're overly complicated, you know, but the only reason they're saying that is because HMRC has been used to working on a 3-band system right across the UK. What it actually does is it raises an extra 500 million quid a year for public services, and nobody objects to it. Nobody. Because the polling before the system came in and all the current affairs programmes before the system came in, everybody right across the spectrum in Scotland said, I will throw more money in the pot if it improves and helps maintain public services. We tend to be quite civic-minded that way. I mean, people have to come up here and get on the ground to be able to see how really civic-minded we are. You know, we're quite happy to pay an extra penny in the pound if it's going to support our services. And if inflation means it's going to be 2 pence in the pound, then let's do that. It's 1 less Starbucks a week. You know, we're quite pragmatic about it. And that was right across the income scale. For those in the least to those in the most, we all agreed, aye, of course, let's do this.
But I think this also plays into what I was saying before about where England seems to be racing towards the bottom, a race to the bottom, while Scotland is going in a different direction. It seems to be more caring about its citizens, more caring about the poor, more caring about children. The Tories are the complete opposite, I see. I want to say thanks to Son of Viking for that super chat from Norway. Thank you so much. Happy with the proposed SNP constitution, or should a better one be agreed, preferably by the people ASAP? What do you think about that?
There are various groups looking at constitutions and writing up constitutions as we speak. Professor Mark McNaught, the American guy, an expert on the American Constitution, he teaches at Rennes University in France. He was quite involved in the independence movement, and he was quite involved in the idea of drawing up a Scottish constitution.
Can I ask, would you prefer a written constitution? Yes.
Yes. A written constitution drawn up by the people for the people.
Okay, very good. Okay, let's move on. Thanks so much for that super chat. We have a question for both of us from Killer. Not saying at all that it needs to be. Sorry. Not saying at all that there's any need for this, but do you both think it's a suitable replacement? Who do you think would be a suitable replacement for Nicola Sturgeon as leader of the SNP and First Minister? Ian Blackford, Kate Forbes, Joanne Cherry, or John Sweeney?
None of the above.
None of them. Do you have somebody else in mind apart from Davy himself?
Kate Forbes.
I was thinking Ian Blackford because he seems to be much more popular. Well, he's more well known. I was thinking like Joanne Cherry is maybe too much. She's had too many run-ins with the party, so maybe she's not a good choice. But why would you say Kate Forbes?
Bright, intelligent, young, enthusiastic. Ian Blackford's a stuffed shirt.
Is it? Would you say that Ian Blackford has too much baggage?
I think all of the people that were mentioned in that list have too much baggage.
Apart from Kate Forbes, yes.
Kate Forbes is sorry, was she on the list, was she?
Yeah, Kate Forbes.
Kate Forbes. Sorry, I must have misheard you. Kate Forbes for me, she's young, she's fresh, she's enthusiastic, she's intelligent. I reckon that's it. And she's the future. The rest of them are stuffed shirts, and they're all stuck in the past. Blackford would try and recreate Westminster.
Mm.
You know, Joanne Cherry would try and recreate the Supreme Court. You know, they all come with baggage. I don't want baggage. I want fresh thinking.
Well said, well said. We have another super chat from Robert. Will the Royals still be welcome in Balmoral in an independent Scotland?
I don't see why not. I'm no a royalist, but until we have a referendum to decide on the future of that part of our constitution, are we going to have a constitutional monarch? Are we going to have a president? Are we going to have something else? Then that's a debate for another day. As far as I'm concerned, it's a debate for another day.
Yeah. First, keep your eye on the prize. Make sure you get independence first, and then you can deal with monarchies. I'm not a fan of monarchies, as you can imagine, but I do understand that for many people there is a strong connection with the Queen, with the royal family.
It's one division. It's just one division we don't need at this point in time. You can't change the decoration until you get the keys to the house.
Yes, good point.
I'm quite a realist, Max. You know what I mean? I'm an eyes on the prize guy. You know what I mean? And I don't want dollars like me that were brought up in the existing institutions to create our future. I want young, fresh thinking like Keith Forbes.
Very good. We have another question from Glasgow Kiss, and this is for both of us. There was a sizable portion of the Indie supporters who voted to leave the EU. I think somewhere around 1/3 has been touted from many sources. Are there independence parties? Are the independence parties at risk of being alienating these voters by saying the goal is to rejoin the European Union?
No, because there's a debate to be had. We've already spoke about this. There's a debate to be had. We have options. We have EFTA, we have the EEA, we have a full membership. We have options. That's a debate for another day too. For me, these are all debates for the day after we get the keys to the house.
Yeah, I think these become a distraction. The European Union is important. It's important whether the Scotland rejoins it or not, but that's not something that is going to happen tomorrow. It's something that you need independence first. So I think some of these issues I think are brought up by unionists more than independence minded people. They're more, and I've heard Douglas Ross bring it up when he was talking about the consequences of Brexit, saying, well, the SNP want to rejoin the European Union and bring back red tape, which just blew my mind. The problems the fishermen are facing at the moment is because of Brexit, the Brexit red tape. And he was saying that the SNP wanted to rejoin the EU, and he wanted the fishermen to suffer Brexit EU red tape. Anyway, okay. We talked about that. Let's move on. This is from Chris.
The Tories don't do irony. The Tories in Westminster don't do irony. They don't. They just don't do it. I heard you today talking about the idiot that was talking about the EU's border and the Irish Sea. And you go, oh, hold on a minute. Say that again. Are you really that stupid? It's the EU's border and the Irish Sea. Wow. Hey, they don't do irony, Max.
No, they don't. Our next question from Chris Davey. This one is for you. For all interested parties, could you explain the difference between the Union of Crowns 1603 and the Act of Union 1707, and why, if an independent Scotland will retain the Queen as head of state? So maybe if you want to break it down, so this between the Union of Crowns and the Act of Union.
The Union of Crowns that took place basically in 1603. The English had run out of their own monarchs, and they were looking around Europe to see what was available to take the crown. And the only one that they could agree on was our king. And of course, he was related to their royal family. So they come up the road in 1600, 1601, 1602 or something, offered them the crown of England. They says, aye, thanks very much. Hello, Union of Crowns. He became the King of England and Scotland. So fast forward to 1707, and after years and years and years of trade embargoes and threats of a war and everything else, and then of course the strangling of the Darien expedition to ensure that Scotland couldn't get a foothold in South America and actually build colonies. Thank Christ we didn't. We just helped England build theirs. Irony again. But and basically with the Alien Act pushed upon us and things like that, so trade with England had been cut off, and if you're cutting off trade with your biggest neighbour, then you've got them by the ghoulies. And then of course The King starts threatening the Scottish Lords that went belly up in the Darien project, and gets them to convince the Scottish Parliament to get into recess and move lock, stock and barrel to London. And hence we have the Treaty of Union and the Articles of Union. So that's basically it. That's the difference between the two. One's a political union and the other one was intermarriage, a family, if you like.
Thanks for that very, very brief history lesson. Okay, let's move on. This is from Era. This is for you, Davy, again. You support an independent referendum to make an independent Scotland, which is effectively nation building. I'm wondering, how do you do currency, passports, military and borders on an island, on an independent nation? Any thoughts? So you have 1 minute. No.
How does anybody else bloody well do it? Are we that stupid that we can't copy and paste what everybody else is doing? See, these sort of questions, these are the sort of questions that want me to bang my head off a desk. You know, I mean, how do you do currency? How does Westminster do currency? How does Norway do currency? How does anybody do currency? You create a central bank. You put in place banking regulations. You print money against your assets. How do you print a passport? You buy a big bloody printing press and some ink and paper. You know.
I know there's an idea that you have to reinvent the wheel, but it's not the case.
It's not. As I've said all the way through this, Max, the templates are out there. This is the sort of question that has Davy gone on a rant in a truck. You know, because are the Scottish people so inferior that we can't look about and see how everybody else does it? Sorry if that took more than 60 seconds.
Very good. Conservator has a question for both of us. If or when Scotland has voted for independence, how do you think negotiations with the current government will go? So the government in England, I assume. Would it be a good idea to finalise the negotiations with the new UK government? Does Scotland have any experienced trade negotiators? So how do you see negotiations going between an independent Scotland and Westminster post independence?
Well, as I say, we'll follow the Vienna Accords and we'll follow them step by step. And if Westminster doesn't like the steps in the Vienna Accords, they better withdraw before we get independence NE, because they signed up in 1976, July 25th. This stuff isn't rocket science. It's been done. There's templates there all over the place. Why is it that only Scotland has these problems? You know, how is it the Czech Republic managed to split up into Slovakia and Czechoslovakia managed to do it? And how is it all these Balkan states managed to do it, and yet Scotland and England can't? We're not even going to get round the table with these bampots unless the Vienna Conventions and they agree to the Vienna Conventions and the Vienna Accords. If they don't like it, tough. What happens is, over a period of time, their relationship and their relevance to us, if they want to take that sort of attitude, will just be, it will just dissipate over the years because our trade links will be elsewhere. And that's what happened with Slovakia and the Czech Republic. You know, as to how do you create a currency? A currency was created within 3 months in that revolution. That velvet revolution, as they call it.
You can actually...
You know, that horse. I mean, it's all done via the international rules that are set out in the Vienna Accords. And the UK's assigned to do it. So we'll just invoke it because we will be in a transition period, the same way the UK was as it came out of. And by the way, there's even a set prescripted timetable to finish all this stuff. In the Vienna Accords, it takes 18 months to set a state up. 18. The fastest it's been done is 6.
My God. But do you see Westminster trying to play hardball?
They did with the EU, and that was be petulant and stupid and unreasonable, and to blame everybody else. It's in their psyche. You know, it's the reason why Boris Johnson never apologises.
Yes.
Because they're not brought up to apologise, they're brought up to rule. They don't even think the same way that us ordinary human beings think. You know, they're trained for the minute for the potty till they get to the Prime Minister. They are trained to think that they are above us and better than us, and that they make better decisions than us. And it's been going on for 800, 900 years down that road, and it's not changed. You know.
Okay.
And that's, you know, I mean, you have to look at the national psyche, right? And the national psyche down that road seems to be of empire and of their superiority. I mean, Finkel too, as I say in the Irish Times, he does this stuff wonderful. You know, he looks at the psyches of the peoples of these islands. And that includes Northern Ireland and Southern Ireland and Wales and Scotland. And he looks at the individual nations and the attitudes of the peoples and things like that. And it's quite funny. But it's absolutely true. You know, they actually believe, because they had an empire that spanned 3/4 of the world, that they are superior. You know, and that's the reason why we have trident nuclear weapons. They're woolly waving, trying to kid when they're still important. England's having a national meltdown, and the rest is they're suffering for it. You know,
I just wanted to say on that point about the question was an argument against Scottish independence being, well, England are going to treat you like crap in a negotiation, is not an argument against independence. It's maybe an argument more for independence.
This goes back to the media and the lack of knowledge here in the UK, that people actually don't understand that there's prescriptions for doing these negotiations. You know, England or Scotland don't sit down and write the rules. The rules are already there, and the UK is a signatory of those rules. So we will follow those rules by the letter. I mean, the attitude, we've seen the attitude that we'll get to Westminster.
Davey, I haven't been following the chat, but Glasgow Kiss sent us a super chat. Thank you so much for that, Glasgow Kiss. He says, Davey, can you dispel this Spanish veto nonsense for someone in the chat? So there has been there has been this idea that Spain would veto Scottish independence. Can you dispel that?
Oh, the idea that Spain would veto Scottish membership of the EU, because they can't veto independence.
Sorry.
All they can do is refuse to recognise us, for all the difference that will make. But entry into the EU because of the Catalonia situation, well, it's not the same thing, and it's already been dispelled by the current Spanish foreign secretary, or whatever they call them there in Spain, who said, no, we wouldn't block it, because they understand the constitutional differences. Catalonia in 1976, I believe it was, after the Franco debacle, signed up to the Spanish constitution, and they don't have the right to leave. Scotland's just a country in a union. Although what's interesting is the way that Westminster's behaving, it's beginning to look as if we're actually being dictated to, and we are a colony. Because according to the last a head civil servant and down that road, a guy called Professor Karen Martins, who's now at the Oxford School of Global, he's now a professor at the Oxford School of Global Governance, right? They look into how countries are governed right around the world. He says that Westminster are now at the stage where they intend to legislate to prevent Scottish independence. And that would destroy a 300-year strong belief in Scotland and England that this was a voluntary union. And that would make Scotland a colony.
Can we answer another super chat? This is from Robert. It says, hi Davey, do you think the naval base in Clyde would be retained by the British in an independent Scotland? The British held on to Irish ports until 1938.
No, it just won't happen. They'll be given a time period to get their boats out, get their nuclear weapons out, and that'll be an end to it. And if they try and say they can't move them to somewhere else, Davy and his mates will rock up that hill with a fleet of bloody trucks, stick them on the trailers, run them down that bloody road, and I'll show them how we can move them. And we don't care where they put them. It'll go.
Dr. Johan, thank you so much for that super chat as well. Okay, let's move on to the next question. This is from Reagan Elite. We are a long way from having a suitable British government, and I hope Scotland eventually becomes independent, even if it makes me sad the way it has come about. My question is, how important is the relationship going to be between Scotland and England after independence, and can it become eventually a strong working relationship if Britain has the right people in charge? So maybe, I know this is for you, Davy, but the idea that perhaps maybe, if Boris Johnson and his cronies are removed from office and you have the Labour Party or maybe the Liberal Democrats or even a Green government, it's very extremely hypothetical, but if if you had a more friendly government, could you see cooperation? I think so, yes, like cooperation between Scotland and England.
I would give it 5 years. But as I always say, I mean, the reason we are socially, culturally, and even family wise connected, Scottish independence doesn't end that. And there might be a hard border, but we cross hard borders every day when we're travelling internationally to go and see our friends and family. What's the biggie? It's not a biggie at all. But in a very short period of time, it will become a cordial relationship because England has needs and Scotland has what it needs. Scotland has oil, gas, electricity, water, a great industrial base and a great agricultural base. And England needs food, it needs water, it needs light, it needs gas, it needs petrol for its cars. And we've got all these things in abundance. We've got a quarter of Europe's wind potential and tidal potential around our coasts, right? And England has a need for electricity. Right now, it gets a 2.5 gigawatts of electricity into the southeast for France. And the centre of England, it gets a 2.5 gigabytes of electricity through an interconnector from Holland. It gets 3.5 gigawatts of electricity through an interconnector for Scotland. And we also have a 1.5 gigawatt interconnector that goes to Northern Ireland for Scotland, right? So England has a huge need of energy and Scotland has an abundance of it. I like to rip the piss out of them and say they'd crawl up that road in broken glass to get a trade deal, because they will.
I think that England or Britain or United Kingdom in 5 years' time is going to be extremely different to the UK we're seeing at the moment, especially post independence. Akismad has a question for you, Davy. This is got one for Davy. Sorry, Max. Davy, a few people I've been talking to, unionists, have repeatedly mentioned that £500,000 has disappeared from the finances for COVID. Still not sure what they're banging on about. Do you have any idea? P.S. I think it's rich coming from them after the obvious corruption down in Westminster. So do you know anything about this £500,000, Davy?
If it's only 500,000, I'd be well upset. I'm hoping that they're
That's amateurish.
Yeah, no, I'm hoping that the Scottish Government is holding plenty of this money in reserve, because we have manifestly better management of our systems up here. It's how we manage to get better services than own a pocket money, right? So all that extra money that they've thrown up this road for COVID, I'm hoping that the way that we are efficient in what we do means that it's cost us less than what they thought it was going to cost, and they'll give us more than we needed. So there better be more than 500,000, because the promise has been made in some of these manifesto pledges. They're going to need a few quid down the back of the sofa.
Thanks, actually, for that question. From Bogdan, we have this question, Davy. What has the UK government done about rules of origin? And any new on your side of the aisle? I know Scotland work a wee bit different than the UK.
Well, actually, this is one of the things that would be done under the internal market bill, so we would need to suck it up, buttercups, whether we like that or no. But as far as I know, they haven't got very, very far on the origin of goods, actually. And I believe it's frightening the life out of the car industry at this point in time. It's petrifying them. Um, so I don't know how far they are in imposing their own regulations on standards and things like that, but it ought to be funny. One of the things that is interesting on the work that they have done, they intend to wipe out the name of Scotland, Northern Ireland and Wales for the international markets, and everything will be branded as British. Except for England, it will still be able to be branded as England on the international markets. Isn't that interesting?
I uploaded a video recently where there was an English politician who was originally from Glasgow, but he's an MP in, I don't remember what part of England, but he was complaining about how this the COP 26, was it 27, COP 27, 26, sorry, is taking place in Glasgow, and he was concerned about how what about London? How is London going to benefit from this? So it's interesting that when the Olympics took place in 2012, there was no mention of how Glasgow was going to benefit from the Olympics in 2012.
If he's living down that road, he's got his own interests. People should be interested in the local politics. The COP26 being in Glasgow, well, I believe Glasgow bid for it and won. That's generally how these things are done, isn't it?
Yeah.
And of course, Glasgow has got great history in hosting massive events. So especially in the private sector, people don't really understand this, but right around Scotland, actually, our what we call were conference centres, like the Aberdeen Conference Centre, you've got the SECC in Glasgow. We have massive conference venues. It makes it very, very, I've got one in Edinburgh as well. It makes Scotland a great place to have conferences. And we have a very strong, and you could call it an industry if you like, and providing platforms for conferences, and we're very successful at it. So, that's why Nike had their conference in Edinburgh. It's an easy place to get to the UK and Scotland, and Scotland's got attractive venues there, and people who are experienced on putting conferences on. So Glasgow bid for it and Glasgow won it. Whether London benefits from it or no, I don't care.
We have another super chat from Glasgow Kiss. It says here, Davy, do you think Ireland is a shining example of what can be done about independence? About 3 times the GDP and a lot fairer welfare system. Eyes on the prize. So do you think Ireland could be an example to follow? I think it's a little bit related to a question we heard before, but thanks for that super chat.
I'm willing to look at all models. But I'm not going to be making the decisions. I want young, fresh people to make the decisions. Because when you look at it, Max, look at the bloody mess the UK is in. And it's down to our disinterest
of young
and
people,
local communities and things like that. You know what I mean? One thing that the 2014 referendum did do, it woke the people of Scotland up. Now we look at everything. We look at it in detail, absolutely everything. There is now 3 to 5. We're going to get 5 manifestos because I don't think George Galloway is going to put one out, right? But I can guarantee you that people my age and younger will actually read all 5. We'll actually sit down and read them. You take the Greens manifesto, 98 pages, the SNP's one's about 113 or something, but people will sit down and read them. That's where we're at Scotland. That's where we're at in Scotland.
That's the way it should be. People should be informed. People should read the manifesto, should be interested in this because it is their future.
And that has been the one bonus of having the media that we have, even though they try to psychologically torture us every day by telling us how crap we are. At least we go elsewhere to find out the truth.
Well said. And may it continue. We have a super chat from Connie from the United States. Thank you so much, Connie. This is, how would Scotland distribute the proceeds of oil sales amongst the people? And how would it use it to also continue to invest in renewable energy, such as wind and solar energy? So, yeah.
I think we would probably follow the Norway model. And that would be to set up an oil fund.
A fund,
and
yeah.
just
Put the money in there.
Funnel the money in there, invest it, and then use whatever, set a nominal amount that we can draw down on.
Yeah,
right?
I think Norway has done a fantastic
and build
job
a sovereign wealth fund as we transition.
Well said.
I think that's how we would do it. We would follow the Norway model.
I want to read out another. Sorry.
So just thank you to everybody who's doing a super chat tonight, because the money's going to some really good causes.
Yeah. Thank you so much, guys. Yeah. We have another super chat for you, Davey. Davey, you're a legend. Do you think the UK government would move the nukes out before the day of independence? The Canadians moved fighter jets out of Quebec in '95 before referendum.
Hey, one thing's for sure. Until they've paid the money to repair the damage that these nukes have done, we're tying them up. Anyway, I know the UK's nukes, the day after independence, they're in Scotland. They're our nukes. And we're keeping them. And we're going to take them back to America and stick up their jacksies. But we're going to take them back to America and say, please don't give these to the English. They're dangerous.
Okay, I think we've come to the end of the questions. So I just want to say, I don't know, Davey, if you want to just spend another couple of minutes, if you don't mind staying on with me for another couple of minutes, we'll have a look at some more super chats as they come in. So guys, if you want to hit us with a super chat before we finish the stream tonight, Lee has a great chat tonight, both guys. Thank you so much, Lee. Thank you so much for that super chat. I think it's been a great discussion tonight. I'm always in awe of Davey's knowledge.
Enjoyed my perspective.
I think they did. I think they certainly did. We had over 550 viewers, I think, tonight. So, guys, remember to smash that like button, and also check out Davey's channel. Davey pumps out videos on a continuous. I don't know how he does it, and he works at the same time. So.
I come home and annoy my wife by telling her, "Be quiet, I'm trying to study here. I've got a show to write."
The boss lets you off from time to time.
Well, yeah, she'll be a bit crabbit now and again, but hey, it's an age thing. No, that'd be a bit chauvinistic. No, she's very supportive, I have to say. She is.
We have another super chat from Andy. Good evening and good night. Thank you so much, Andy. Great to have you on tonight again, Andy. Great. Scott's Dog, another super chat. If the unionists, I'll move the screen. If the unionists need a rebuke, they'll have to be told it's no fluke. Substock on the Clyde, let them be side. Westminster, they'll need a good nuke. now, no violence in the super chats.
When people are talking about the nuclear arsenal on the Clyde and what's going to happen to it because England says they can't remove it, it's too dangerous to keep it in England. But it's dead easy. We'll just thank them for the gift. You think the Americans care whether it's us or whether it's England? After all the other Americans.
We have another super chat from Conservator. Cheers, Davey. Well done, Davey. We have Diarmid has a super chat. Thanks, Davey. Ireland stands with Scotland. Yes, Ireland does stand with Scotland. And I think this is something, and it's not just something that, you hear the ordinary Irish people saying, but even the Irish government said that it would be willing to support fast-tracking an independent Scotland into the European Union. We have more coming. We have more coming in here. I'll read them out quickly. This is from Lewis again. Make fun of Brexiteer impression with flags, but they are important national symbols. Do you think the UK will remove the Saltire from the Union Jack? How do you think the British will take this, etc.? So how do you think the Union flag will change after independence?
I don't really care.
I think it's the same approach to what do you think the EU care, or what do you think the EU think when they read the Express? They don't care. Or what Brexiteers have to say about the EU. The EU don't give a crap about what the Brexiteers think. So,
And what's even better is that the people here in Scotland love it. I mean, that video you put out today, Max, that was pure comedy gold. I mean, when we see that, we say, is that the best they've got? Is that what's running our lives? I mean, he didn't do irony. He was as thick as mince. Oh, wonderful stuff. And Fiona Bruce, how she wasn't there all about laughing. Come on.
The one Reese, we have another super chat. Whoa, I missed that. Sorry, go back up. Love this chat. Light a path for Wales on your exit. Yes, light a path for Wales as well. Let's hope for Wales too. I know it's further. I think it will come. It's just further down the road. Davey, is that iron brew really made from girders?
I couldn't tell you. I'm not a soft drinks manufacturer. I might be a bit of a guzzler, but I'm certainly not a manufacturer.
No offense to iron brew, but I think it tastes like watered sugar, sugared water.
I
prefer whiskey. Davey, what products besides Scotch can I buy from Scotland in the US?
You can buy cashmere. You can buy Scotch beef if you want to pay for it. And it'll take a wee while to get to you, but it'll be good. No, there's a range of Scottish things, but it's mostly twee. It's mostly what we call shortbread box stuff. You can buy tartan scarves and gloves and things like that. You can buy yourself a kilt. All these sort of things that what we call shortbread box stuff. The stuff, the tat that we sell, every country sells to everybody. But on serious things, serious goods, quality goods, we do cashmere, we do tweed, we do good woolen products. So there are a range of things. Food products to the US isn't really that practical after all. Yeah, it's a long way away, 3,300 miles. It's only just around the corner.
The biscuits are very nice.
Aye. Oh, well, I mean, we do. I'm not saying we don't export. I mean, I've got a friend that owns a company that makes Edinburgh Rock, and he ships a pallet a week to somewhere in America, and he ships a pallet a week to Canada. I can understand it going to Canada with Nova Scotia and things like that, but why? I don't know what state in America he ships to, but it's a regular order for him.
That's great. Another super chat. Let me see. Jamie Mack says, I got excited watching the SNP manifesto announcement. About what is possible? Even more would be an independent Scotland. Thanks both for the chat. Thank you very much, Jamie.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. And this is something different, difference between the Tories and the SNP in the sense that people are actually listening to what the SNP have to say. They're interested in what their policies are. Does anyone really care about what the Tories have to say? Because it basically lies anyway.
Well, as I said after the leaders' debates, Max, you might have heard me say this, but what we had with two parties there who had aspirations for Scotland, the Greens and the SNP, and we had three parties that were for the status quo because they had no imagination and they had nothing to offer the people of Scotland. And anything they did offer was a lie because their branch offices and they're dictated to from their headquarters in London. So they can promise us the moon, but if Westminster says you can't have it,
then you can't have it.
And that's exactly the situation and it's the problem for these parties. It's why the language and the lower margins of Scottish politics, they really are.
There's another super chat from Andy. Thank you so much, Andy. Sorry if it's been talked about before about a Scottish-English border. Is that possible? Maybe should rewind the stream. We did talk about. David did mention it before.
There will be a border. There will be. But what's the problem? It won't be a border on people as long as England and England and Ireland are reasonable and they want to allow free movement of people through the common travel area. The CTA already exists. but there will definitely be a border for goods.
Yeah.
And the reason for that is because we want to collect for import and export taxes. And for that reason, there will need to be a border. But that doesn't have to be an impediment on the movement of people, because we already have the common travel area. It's been around for 100 years now.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, this isn't reinventing the wheel. You know, it's about the reason why people are asking these questions is because we have such poor media coverage. I mean, you could walk down any street in Scotland and say to somebody, you know what the CTA is? And they wouldn't have a clue.
No.
You know? They wouldn't have a clue that there are actually treaties in place to allow people to move from Ireland to Scotland and Scotland to Ireland and Scotland to England and things like that. They don't really understand all of that stuff there, you know. And that's down to poor education and poor media coverage, you know.
But it's important that we have voices like yours, Davy, who are there to inform, and you really are doing that. So, guys, I think we'll wrap it up here because it's been almost 2 hours. I've taken enough of your time, Davy. So I want to say a huge thank you to Davy for coming on the stream tonight. I want to say a massive thank you to everyone who sent a super chat for supporting the charities tonight. That's really greatly appreciated. We're going to send it on. Also, if you can, try to support the channel, the charities directly. Unfortunately, Google take a huge amount of money from super chats, so we try to, I try to top it up if I can. So we'll try and help them out in any way we can. But do consider supporting those charities directly. Do check out Davy's channel. It's a wonderful channel. He uploads content all the time, and the other channels that are connected to his, what is the name of the other one?
It's IndyCar Gordon Ross.
Gordon,
He's
yeah.
at the moment. He's not putting a lot out at the moment.
Okay.
And we do put other content onto the channel.
Yeah, so definitely do check those out. So once again, thanks to everyone who came on the stream tonight. Thanks for all of your comments. Thanks for all of your super chats. Thanks to the moderators for doing a fantastic job. Thanks to the moderators for setting up the questions tonight. Really good questions. Thanks to everyone who collaborated in that. And I want to say thanks to Glasgow Kiss, for example, for setting up the Discord server at the very beginning. A Discord server is 1 year old today. Thanks for that. And I want to say thanks to everyone for everything that they have done for the stream tonight. So I want to say thanks. Have a great weekend, guys. I'll see you all next Tuesday. Same bat time, same bat channel, 9:30 Greenwich Mean Time or British Summer Time, whichever, Scottish time. So I leave the last word to Davey if you want to say anything before we go.
Yeah, thanks very much, Max. Thanks to everybody who's donated tonight via a super chat. I really enjoyed this. It's been good fun. I hope people enjoy my points of view on Scottish politics and on other issues,
Great. Thanks a lot. Okay, guys, I'll see you soon. See you next Tuesday. Take care. And as Boris Johnson always says, stay alert. Good night.